Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kylie Higgins, and I am the Homeless Veteran Community Employment Coordinator for VA Maine Healthcare System. And today I would like to talk to you all about work talk and how employment helps end veteran homelessness. So here we go. Just a few housekeeping items. If you could please mute your microphones and stop video cameras, it would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to stop my video camera throughout the presentation. And then at the very end, when we have the questions portion, I'll bring mine back up. The presentation is being recorded for future use. Please feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the presentation as the chat box is being monitored. And there will also be time, as I stated, at the end of the presentation for questions. If there is a point in time that you would like to speak to me one-on-one after the presentation is over, please let me know and I would be happy to make this happen. But most of all, have fun. So here are the objectives for this morning's presentation. So just an introduction to VA homeless programs, employment and homelessness in rural areas, what it takes to make employment a reality for homeless veterans, community employment coordinator, what's that? And community employment partnerships across the state. So just some information for everyone. The VA is obviously committed to ending homelessness among veterans. The focus is threefold. So first, conducting and coordinating outreach to proactively seek out veterans in need of assistance, connecting homeless and at-risk veterans with housing solutions, healthcare, community employment services, and other required supports, and then also collaboration. So collaborating with federal, state, and local agencies, employers, housing providers, faith-based and community nonprofits, and others to expand employment and affordable housing options for veterans exiting homelessness. So as far as the VA Maine healthcare standpoint, we do have a mission and vision statement. So our mission at VA Maine is to partner with veterans to provide exceptional healthcare for body, mind, and spirit. And our vision is to be the premier integrated healthcare system in Maine, with highly engaged employees providing exceptional care to the veterans that we serve. As far as our homeless programs, there are specialized programs throughout the VA for homeless veterans that serve hundreds of thousands of homeless and at-risk veterans each year. These programs collaborate as well as work independently with federal and community partners. VA programs provide veterans with housing solutions, employment opportunities, healthcare, justice and reentry related services, and more. And I just wanted to show a quick video on how you all can help homeless veterans.
Team member will then be dispatched to locate and talk. Every day, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and its partners work hard to put veterans who are homeless and at imminent risk of becoming homeless on the pathway to permanent housing. As a result, homelessness among veterans is at an all-time low. Yet there still are far too many veterans who need help in communities nationwide. The good news is that you can make a difference by following one or both of these simple steps. If you see or know a person who is homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless, and you know or think that person is a veteran, encourage them to visit the closest VA medical center for help. Trained personnel are on hand to assess each veteran's needs and connect them with appropriate VA and community resources. Or encourage them to contact the National Call Center for Homeless Veterans anytime, day or night, at 877-4AID-VET. Or you can make the call yourself. A VA representative will ask the caller to provide information about the homeless veteran, such as their location and a physical description. A trained VA homeless program team member will then be dispatched to locate and talk with the person face-to-face to verify they are a veteran and discuss ways that VA can help them secure stable housing and other services they may need. The brave women and men who served in the military answered our nation's call to keep every American safe and secure. Now you can help make sure that every veteran is safe and secure in stable housing. A few brief words or phone call really can help end veteran homelessness.
It was a lot to take in being homeless, being angry, being hungry. But because I don't have a home, it don't mean I don't have a life. It doesn't mean I don't count. And once I went down to the VA, my life began to change. And I'm gonna say this perfectly clear, without them, I guess I would still be homeless.
Living in the streets, out there you know you're a dead man walking. At least with the VA, you got a chance, you got a safety net. If you're homeless, go to VA Medical Center.
Veterans that are homeless, people tend to kind of give them the brush off. Don't overlook that veteran because they could probably need your help more than you know. Just refer them to the nearest VA Medical Center or the VA Homeless Veterans Line.
Okay, so here is a list of the comprehensive homeless programs that the VA partners with. So we have our coordinated entry system, our HCHV program, SSVF programs, our HVRP group, our grant and per diem or GPD group, our VJOs, and our HVRP programs. And there on the left, you can see just some of the programs that we have here in the state of Maine. So Volunteers of America, Veterans Inc., Easter Seals Maine, and Preble Street. So our coordinated entry system, a lot of folks aren't familiar with this, so I really wanted to touch on how coordination actually happens throughout the state. So the coordinated entry system is an approach to the coordination and management of a crisis response system's resources that allow users to make consistent decisions from available information to efficiently and effectively connect people to interventions that will rapidly end their homelessness. Without this coordination, there are quite a few challenges, which includes veterans completing intakes and screenings multiple times. If there is one thing that I have heard throughout my VA career, it is veterans really express their frustration when they have to say the same thing over and over again. So, this is something that we really want to try to eliminate by creating a standardized intake or a standardized screening. That way they only have to say their one thing one time. Veterans receiving duplicate services from more than one program at a time. All programs serving veterans of varying vulnerability. There are underutilized or overstretched programs, and there's also limited communication between programs. So this graphic on the right here just goes through the step-by-step process as far as the beginning to the end of engagement, assessment, intervention, and housing placement, and what the steps are at each process. So it starts with outreach or self-referral, and then it goes to addressing immediate needs with the assessment, and then meeting the client's needs using progressive engagement for the housing intervention, and then ultimately ending in the housing placement. So the by name list gets updated, and that's where you can get a lot of the information as far as the veterans that we serve. And then once we get that list of updates, we can do case consultation with other community partners throughout the state and really utilize these 4 steps in order to place veterans in permanent housing. So the Healthcare for Homeless Veterans program, this is our HCHV program. And this program offers outreach, case management, and residential treatment services to help veterans transition from living on the street or in institutions to stable housing. The staff engage and serve veterans who are homeless, including those that are diagnosed with mental health or substance abuse issues. And through this program, veterans receive exams, treatment, referrals, and case management. And I really wanted to provide some information as far as the COVID-19 pandemic. I know this is something that we have been experiencing almost for the last year. And a lot of times folks don't know what resources are out there. So for this program in particular, the HCHV program, $10 million has been allocated from the CARES Act to provide emergency shelter and supportive services during the COVID-19 crisis. Some of these resources include placements for veterans needing emergency shelter or isolation to avoid spreading the virus. The housing is also paired with care, treatment, and rehabilitative services. So this is really, really important because sometimes folks that wouldn't otherwise qualify for these programs do qualify under the CARES Act. So it's really important to utilize these resources. And some of these pictures over here are just a couple of the options that veterans have throughout the state as far as transitional housing or some of the shelters. So we have the Gary Owen House, which provides temporary housing for homeless veterans in a safe, comfortable, and supportive environment that facilitates transition from a life of insecurity, dependency, and social isolation. As of January 2020, the Gary Owen House has helped 37 homeless veterans. We also have the Bread of Life Ministry shelter. The shelter now offers 20 beds and 10 overflow beds each night to help those who are homeless. The average stay is about 30 days, and the goal is to get veterans settled in transitional or permanent housing so that they can receive the care they need to become self-sufficient, working toward employment and education whenever possible. There are 2 shelters that serve the Capital Region. There's a family and individual shelter, which is a 26-bed facility, and then a specific veteran shelter that has bed space for 12 men. Both of the shelters are staffed at all hours and provide a safe and structured environment for the residents. And then there's also the Betsy Ann Ross House of Hope. So that is the white building with the yellow door. And this is the only transitional home in Maine for female veterans. And then that last picture there is something that I'm very proud of. It's the Cabin in the Woods project located at the VA. And this is also another opportunity to get veterans housed. We also have the SSVF programs in the state of Maine, which is the Supportive Services for Veteran Families. This program targets very low income veterans and provides case management and supportive services to prevent the imminent loss of a veteran's home or identify a new, more suitable housing situation for the individual and his or her family. Another option for this program is rapid rehousing. So they work with veterans and their families who are homeless and might remain homeless without this assistance. So how this works is the VA funds community nonprofits and the grantees provide services to veterans and their families. So our Preble Street and Vets Inc. affiliates are our SSVF counterparts. And as far as the CARES Act, specific to the SSVF program, $202 million has been allocated to provide emergency housing and homelessness prevention assistance to very low income veterans families to mitigate the expected wave of evictions and potential homelessness that will result from extensive unemployment. Funds from this program also assist the HVRP program in placing veterans in safe housing to isolate them from the virus. So then we have our HVRP program, which is a collaborative program between HUD and VA, which combines HUD housing vouchers with VA supportive services to help veterans who are homeless and their families find and sustain permanent housing. As of April 2018, HUD has allocated more than 87,000 vouchers to help house veterans across the country. So if you think about it, that's over 2 years ago. So that number has obviously grown, which means that this has been a positive partnership and a positive effort to aid in ending veteran homelessness. Through public housing authorities, HUD provides rental assistance vouchers for privately owned housing to veterans who are eligible for VA healthcare services and are experiencing homelessness. VA case managers may connect these veterans with support services such as healthcare, mental health treatment, and substance use counseling to help them in their recovery process and with their ability to maintain housing in the community. Among all VA homeless continuum of care programs, HVRP actually enrolls the largest number and largest percentage of veterans who have experienced long-term or repeated homelessness. And something about me, I really like statistics. So this graphic here shows that over 40,000 veterans experience homelessness in America. 2/3 were staying in shelters or transitional housing, and 1/3 were unsheltered. So this effort is really important to come together, whether you're affiliated with the VA or out in the community, to reduce this number to hopefully one day get down to 0. We also have our GPD, or Grant and Per Diem program. This involves state, local, and tribal governments and nonprofits that receive capital grants and per diem payments to develop and operate transitional housing, including short stay bridge housing or service centers for veterans who are homeless. Again, the CARES Act also has provided funding to our Grant and Per Diem program. $88 million has been allocated, which allows VA to waive per diem limits during the COVID-19 crisis and help grant and per diem grantees to provide all needed emergency housing and supportive services, including emergency placement for veterans who need to be isolated for their safety or the safety of others. So again, the CARES Act throughout this pandemic has really allowed us to help those that we may not have been able to help before, whether it was due to a lack of resources or lack of staffing. So this, again, it's very important. We have 2 affiliates here in the state of Maine. So we have our Veterans Inc. Location in Lewiston, and then also our Volunteers of America counterparts, which have 2 houses, one in Biddeford and one in Saco. We also have Justice Outreach and Behavioral Health Services. A lot of times I find when I'm doing outreach, folks don't really know what our Justice Outreach or our Healthcare for Reentry veteran programs are. So I think this is a really important service to highlight. So they are 2 separate programs. So the first one is the Veterans Justice Outreach Program. The VJO aims to prevent homelessness by helping justice-involved veterans who have mental health or substance use issues access needed VA clinical services. They also provide direct outreach, assessment, and case management for veterans in local courts and jails and help them navigate the justice system. Every VA medical center, or VAMC, has at least 1 VJO specialist. We are really lucky here in the state of Maine that we have 3. We have 1 specialist that serves the more northern region of the state of Maine, so pretty much Bangor North. We have 1 that sits at Togus, which is the Augusta VA Medical Center, and she serves pretty much between Augusta to Bangor, and then pretty much from Bath up to Augusta. And then we have our 3rd specialist who serves the southern Maine region, and she sits in Portland. So this graphic here just kind of goes through the chain of how the VJO can be involved. So they do a lot of outreach with law enforcement and emergency services. They do a lot with the veteran post-arrest as well as post-initial hearing. So a lot of times you'll hear about things like Veterans Court. Those are our VJO specialists that really help our veterans as they go through the process. And then also they help once the veteran is released. So they help with community correction and community support. And then if there's any re-entry, they assist with that as well. We also have our Healthcare for Reentry Veteran Programs, or HCRV. These specialists work with veterans to ease their transition from prison back into the community. They meet with incarcerated veterans before they're released and assist them in planning for reintegration into the community by helping them access VA and community services, as well as housing and employment opportunities. So this is a really important partnership that is important to my role, because even though the folks are incarcerated, it allows me to do outreach opportunities as a community employment specialist as well. So that I can give them resources. So when they're released from jail, they already have an idea of employment opportunities, different resources that are available to them. If they need to communicate with me once they're released, they're able to do that as well. So it's an important partnership that, again, sometimes gets lost in the shuffle because that veteran population just tends to get forgotten about sometimes. There's also short-term case management assistance on release. If you would like more information about these programs, I have provided both of their links. So the VJO link is the first one, and the reentry or HCRV program is the second one. So if you would like to familiarize yourselves with these two programs, or feel like it would be beneficial for you to work with them, you can get more information on either of these links, or please reach out to me and I would be happy to either introduce you to the VJOs throughout the state or provide you with more information. We also have our HVRP programs, so the Homeless Veteran Reintegration Project. The Department of Labor funds this job support program for veterans experiencing homelessness who need earned income to maintain stable housing. The program provides services to assist in reintegrating homeless veterans into meaningful employment within the labor force, and also stimulates the development of effective service delivery systems that will address the complex problems facing homeless veterans. So I wanted to give a big shout out to our Easter Seals program here in the state of Maine. So you can see some of the services that are provided. So case management, housing stability assistance, job search help, job skills training, resume building and interview prep, and then also financial assistance for job placement items. And then just on the other side here is a little bit of the eligibility requirements to participate in the HVRP program. So you must be a veteran who served in the active U.S. military, naval, or air service and have an honorable discharge or released under conditions other than dishonorable. Must be considered homeless, defined by the U.S. Department of Labor, and then must have the motivation and willingness to work with the case manager and be connected to the necessary resources. I think this is a huge component as far as motivation and willingness, and I will touch on that a little bit later as I get more in depth into my role personally. But this is something that I face as a community employment specialist or community employment coordinator. Motivation and willingness are two huge components of success when it comes to landing a position of permanent employment. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So something that I really wanted to touch on is employment and homelessness in rural areas. Believe it or not, Maine is extremely rural. And so I feel like when we are working with veterans, it's really important to have sort of these facts stashed away. That way we can really formulate plans as far as what to do next, or demographics or barriers we may face when working with veterans who are unemployed, are homeless, or both. So almost 1/4 of veterans live in rural areas compared to their counterparts. So 18% of all Americans who live in rural areas. More than 3 million veterans residing in rural areas use VHA care. Many rural homeless veterans seek VA services in urban areas. And the reason why I put this in here is because if you think about the state of Maine, you don't have a lot of urban areas. So you think of Lewiston, Bangor, Augusta, Portland. But how long of a drive for some veterans is it to get to those areas to seek those services? So a lot of times what I really like to advocate to folks is, you know, if a veteran is coming into the facility and they had to travel 2 hours or an hour and a half one way to come and see you, it's really important to be prepared and have the resources on hand, because they are still seeking VA treatment, but they live in these rural areas. And if you're the closest facility, you want to be prepared. You don't want to have to send the veteran home and say, come back in 2 weeks, or, you know, I don't have this information for you, because that creates a disconnect, that creates frustration. And that's something that we want to eliminate. So being prepared to help these veterans is something that we need to keep on the forefront. And also the veterans that are living in rural areas are more likely than their urban counterparts to be white, married, have lower education and income, and poorer health. I also really wanted to highlight female veterans. I am a female veteran, so this is something that is very important to me. You know, and veteran women are twice as likely as non-veteran women to experience homelessness. And veteran women are over 3 times as likely as non-veteran women living in poverty to experience homelessness. So as more and more women transition from active duty or from the Guard or from the Reserve, we see more women now than we have ever before that are accessing VA healthcare services. So we really need to keep this in mind too, that it's not just men that are homeless, it's women. They are at higher risk in some instances. So we really need to make sure that we have female veteran specific resources on deck as well. And then just in general, some demographic characteristics associated with the risk of homelessness. And this doesn't pertain to just women, but men as well. They're young, they're not married, they're unemployed, they're 100% service connected or otherwise disabled. They identify as Black and they live in the Northeast. So again, Maine being in the Northeast, we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to help end homelessness. So this is something that I really wanted to touch on because I don't think a lot of people know that this exists. It's called the Maine Homelessness Survey, which is the point in time count. And this is last year's survey. So what this is a survey of sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons on a single night in January. So as you can see by the graph there, this survey was conducted on the 22nd of January. The HUD program requires programs that are receiving federal funds conduct an annual count of homeless persons who are sheltered in emergency shelters, transitional housing, and safe havens within the last 10 days of January. So they have 10 days to choose a night to go and survey that group of folks. The Homeless Initiatives Department at Maine Housing works with homeless services providers and other organizations toward a shared goal of preventing and eliminating homelessness. The Homeless Initiatives administers grants and programs addressing the needs of persons experiencing homelessness in Maine. These programs and grants provide funding for shelter operations and housing navigation services, permanent and temporary rental assistance, and planning and technical assistance. So the reason why I think this is so important is because it provides us with trend data. So if you look at this graphic, it begins in 2010 all the way through 2019. So that top line there, the navy blue, is the point in time total. So that is the total number of people that were surveyed on the 22nd. The turquoise line is the folks that were in the shelter or in shelter, some form of shelter. And then that yellow orange line are the folks that were unsheltered. So from 2010 to 2013, there was a really steady increase. And then again in 2014, but then it dropped in 2015 as far as folks that were unsheltered, but then jumped again in 2016 and it has slowly gone down. But if you look at the point in time total, again, it increased pretty steadily up until 2014, dipped a little in 2015, and has kind of remained steady over the last couple of years, dropping, give or take a couple. But again, we want to focus on the last couple of years and what efforts have gone into the point in time survey throughout the years, making sure that we are making successful strides in putting things in place to end homelessness. So we really want to focus on those efforts to figure out, okay, what is it that we have been doing in order to cause the decrease? Because the decrease is what we want to see. I wanted to show this graph as well because it identifies veterans. As you can see in 2019, there were 57 veterans that were in the survey. And in 2018, there were 64. So we had a decrease in veterans. So 11% fewer veterans were on either sheltered or unsheltered at the time that the survey was conducted. And there were also fewer domestic violence survivors that were surveyed, and also fewer people identified as having a mental illness. But there were more people identified with substance abuse issues and more people self-identified as chronically homeless. So again, judging by these surveys, the areas that we see that have more people that are identifying, those are the areas that we really want to target, but also make sure that we're sustaining the efforts and continue reducing the amount of people in those other areas. So again, this is the second graphic there, just shows over time what these subpopulations look like. So the chronically homeless, the veterans, and those that are domestic violence survivors. So if you look at the turquoise line, that's specific to veterans. And again, it has slowly gone down from 2015 to 2019. So whatever we are doing is successful, and we need to continue to do what we're doing. That way we can hopefully one day see that be zero. And then I have another video here for you. It just kind of wraps up this first half of the presentation and sort of what I've gone over. So for your viewing pleasure, please take a look at this one.
The homeless veteran is a familiar media archetype. Is this the face of a serious epidemic, or just a tired cliche? The number of homeless veterans in America has dropped more than 75% in the last decade, but there are still about 16,000 veterans living on the street and 31,000 more in shelters. And veterans are 40% more likely to experience homelessness than the average American. The problem is mostly concentrated among older veterans who served in Vietnam and other past conflicts. Less than 9% served after 9/11. In fact, younger veterans are less likely to be homeless than their civilian peers. Does that mean the link between veterans and homelessness is becoming a thing of the past? It's true that there are better supports for veterans today than there were during the Vietnam era, but experts warn that homelessness could still spike among Gulf-era veterans. Many young vets move in with family or friends when they return from duty. Over time, those who don't find civilian jobs will exhaust their financial and social reserves. It took 10 years for Vietnam vets to begin showing up on the streets in large numbers. By then, the media and the public had mostly forgotten their war and moved on. What will the homeless veteran population look like in 2025? And what are we prepared to do about it?
Okay, so what are we prepared to do about it? So if you think about it, 2025 isn't that far away. So something that we can do about it is make employment a reality for veterans. So again, I talked about how Maine is so rural. And so I really wanted to present the second half of the presentation on how we can make employment a reality for veterans. So rural America is a diverse world with unique challenges and layered complexities. The rural environment forces creativity when dealing with adversity. In order to deal with that adversity, it's important to develop strong local partnerships with local resources that provide these services across the board. So some folks that I really like to target are faith-based organizations, our local government resources, community groups and clubs, local meetings, town halls, schools and unions, businesses, local and large chain stores, and various foundations. Rural communication systems are based on personal connections, and those that are living in rural communities are authentic and direct communicators. So it's really important when we're working with veterans to develop that sense of rapport and that sense of trust, because if we are authentic and direct communicators, much like the folks that we're working with, that will establish that level of trust, that will establish that working relationship. And it's really, really important, especially to those living in rural areas, to just have the hard and fast facts to make sure people are being transparent and honest. So that is something that I try to emulate day in and day out when I'm working with veterans. And also, local community partners, other affiliates in the VA, I think it's very important that we keep that in mind as well. Rural programs also cover large geographic areas, requiring partnership and traveling long distances when needed. So I thought it was really important to put this demographic map of Maine on here. So if you look, all of the areas here with the red stars are areas that we have community-based outpatient clinics. Now, the state of Maine only has one central large facility, which everybody knows is here in Augusta, which is the Togus VA Medical Center. So that's where a lot of people go to get a lot of their services, specialty services, things like that, whereas our sister outpatient facilities are really only those outpatient services. So primary care, mental health, lab, podiatry, things like that. So if you look, we have areas from Saco all the way to Fort Kent and everywhere in between. I am the only community employment coordinator for the entire VA. So I cover the entire state. So a lot of times people tend to forget how large and how rural our state is. So it's really important to have a standardized process across the board as far as how we're communicating with veterans, the services that we're offering veterans, how we can partner with local community organizations in each of these respective areas. But it's a lot of ground to cover. So keeping in mind how long of a distance one is traveling or how much coverage is required, it's really, really important to be authentic and direct when communicating with both the folks that you're working with in the community as well as the veterans that you're serving. So what is a homeless veteran community employment coordinator? That is me. I am a central figure for the VA that acts as a liaison, an advocate, a technical advisor, and the assessment and development of employment services for homeless veterans at the local VA medical center. So again, I do work out of Togus. That's primarily where I sit outside of a pandemic. Right now I sit at home. But I do cover the whole state. So I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of boots on the ground type of work because I am really motivated to get out there and really meet not only veterans where they are, but also the community partners that I work with. So some other things that I'm responsible for are the ongoing orientation training of the homeless services continuum. So these folks include homeless program providers, grantees, VA employment program staff, et cetera. So it's really important that any updates I receive on my program, I let other people know. So whether that means doing a presentation like this, whether it means coming into your location and having one-on-one conversations as far as updates. I do like a clinical supervision with some of our programs at the VA. So I really just want to provide the most up-to-date information because at the end of the day, this increases the role of employment in permanent housing, as well as any oversight that regards employment outcomes or veterans receiving homeless services. Something that I also provide is direct assistance in connecting veterans to the appropriate and least restrictive medical center or community-based employment service, leading to competitive employment with appropriate support. And I also liaise with our SSVF and grant and per diem grantees that target employment, other federal agencies and local community, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations that provide these services to homeless veterans. So another statistic that I really wanted to highlight is 1 in 10 Maine residents are veterans. So it's really, again, it's a huge population here in the state of Maine. So it's important to make sure that we are always updating information and providing the best services that we can. So some of my responsibilities is collaboration. So first and foremost, collaboration is huge. I collaborate with employers that are ready to hire veterans exiting homelessness, but I can also serve as a recruiter or a recruiter's connection to potential veteran new hires for jobs in a wide variety of sectors. So the huge initiative behind the CEC, or the Community Employment Coordinator, is about fostering change in a couple different spheres. So there are three that I really like to highlight. So the first is the initiative seeks to develop strategies within the VA homeless and employment services that are likely to increase homeless veteran employment. The second initiative is to engage the local workforce system in the community to enlist their help in serving the employment needs of veteran job seekers. So again, fostering those community partnerships. And lastly, employers are recognized as a critical collaborator, and CECs are reaching out to employees to develop jobs for homeless veterans. So if you have not had a conversation with me already, I ensure that you will, if you are either a job provider or a liaison for a specific organization that ultimately will help veterans secure employment, because it is my job to create and foster and maintain those relationships. I typically concentrate on purposeful development on each of these levels, and that has proved to be the most successful and active way to make changes in the employment status of homeless or formerly homeless veterans. So on the screen here, you can see some things that I do. I pre-screen veterans with a variety of skill sets from all educational levels, refer job-ready vets to candidates, help facilitate hiring and onboarding, assist veterans in applying their military experience to civilian employment. This is something that I take really seriously as well, because I personally have had to translate my military experience to civilian employment experience, and it can be really difficult. So learning what all of those military experiences are and how we can translate that to get them hired in the civilian sector is something that I really like to highlight when I'm working with veterans. I also help to meet diversity and inclusion goals and facilitate vocational groups for veterans seeking employment opportunities. This is something that I have not been able to do face-to-face as a result of the pandemic. I am working on a virtual option and have some meetings later on over the next couple of weeks to really partner with other community agencies to figure out how together we can get these vocational groups going, and so that it will not only be a collaborative effort throughout agencies in the state, but also provide opportunities for veterans who are job seeking during the pandemic, what it means to do that virtually, what changes have been made to interviews or job resumes, things like that, as a result of the virtual environment, because a lot of folks right now are doing interviews over the phone or virtually, like in a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting. So kind of getting veterans used to who wouldn't otherwise utilize that virtual environment. So more to come on that. I hope to be able to share more opportunities as like a vocational 101 type group. So throughout the rest of the year and early next year, be on the lookout for that from me. And I hope to enlist those that are participating here today. I hope to enlist your help with that as well. Some other things that I'm responsible for, or would like to think that I'm responsible for, are increasing veterans' likelihood of employment success by connecting vets to job resources. Again, that huge collaboration piece with VA and non-VA partners, and then engaging community partners and local employers on effort to end and prevent homelessness. So things like stand downs, job fairs, the vocational classes, aside from actually saying, hey, can you please, apply to this job posting? What else can we be doing to end and prevent homelessness? So is that, having a stand down where supplies are provided? Is it, hosting a class or, something like that? So more than just applying to jobs, but making sure that we have the whole package. Some common misconceptions about competitive employment. This is something that I hear all the time. So trying to have these informed conversations with not only employers, but with veterans too, and really providing that education piece. So always perceived lack of employment resources. The state is massive. A lot of people get overwhelmed and don't even know where to look, especially during a pandemic. What's out there for me? What's available to me? Ask me those questions and I will point you in the right direction. Working may jeopardize a veteran's benefits. Again, common misconception. There is a risk that veterans may earn their way out of a subsidy or a voucher, but not have enough to successfully manage fair market value. A disability is present. There's lack of transportation. Again, these are barriers, but they're not things that will prevent anyone from securing employment. And then, we have a lot of harmful beliefs about employment. Employment is unnecessary for clients receiving benefits. Absolutely not true. Some veterans should be excluded from employment services because of psychiatric symptoms or substance abuse. Again, not true. And individuals with serious mental illness are fragile and incapable of working. Not true. So it's my job to educate folks along with all of the other VA providers, homeless service providers, and community partners that these things are not true. And I want to show and prove that that is wrong. And that is ultimately what I have set out to do as a community employment specialist. There are many programs and incentives that are offered by different benefit providers to promote employment. And again, once in subsidized housing does not always mean in subsidized housing. We have to work together to develop housing plans that includes employment as one of the goals, and also help develop a budget with veterans that demonstrate the long-term impact of work. So working may jeopardize a veteran's benefits, or there's a risk that veterans may earn their way out of a subsidy or voucher. These are the things that we need to work together on to make sure that those things don't happen. And lastly, something that I wanted to highlight, many people living with a disability not only want to work, but can work. And the majority of people living with a mental health condition indicate that employment is important to them. It helps folks with mental illness to live autonomously, build meaningful personal relationships, become integrated into society, and be able to achieve social, emotional, and familial and general well-being. That is so important. So it's our jobs to help contribute to that positivity. And again, that's something that I take very seriously. So how do I do that? What do I do as a community employment specialist to make sure that there is maintained motivation and maintained confidence throughout the process? And again, not every veteran is a one size fits all. So I may work with a veteran 1 or 2 times, and then I may work with a veteran for a year. Whatever it takes is what I will do to make sure that people secure employment. So what I like to do is I utilize these 2 rulers. So one is my motivation ruler. So that's the top one. How important on a scale of 1 to 10 is a job to you? So if a veteran answers 3 to me, I say, okay, well, that's sort of right in between, not at all important and important. So what are some SMART goals that we can help develop in order to get you from a 3 to a 5 to a 7, and then ultimately a 10? And the same thing with the confidence. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can be successfully employed? If someone isn't confident, well, let's figure out why. And let's do some things and set some SMART goals to get you from a 2 to a 4 to a 7, and then maybe a 9 is as far as you want to go. And if you want to get to a 10, great. But it's at the veteran's pace, and I help to facilitate what those goals are, choose the goals, and then help move them along the rulers. If I'm sort of at a standstill with a veteran, we really can't figure out where we want to go, I like to use this change model here. So it's a lot of people have heard of the stages of change. And this benefits of change diagram here are just 4 questions that I really like to hash out with the veteran. So when it comes to job seeking, what are the benefits of you becoming employed, and what are the costs? And what are the benefits of staying unemployed, and what are the costs? And a lot of times we're able to procure those SMART goals out of the benefits and costs. And that way we can come up with a plan and really establish those SMART goals to make sure that a veteran is on the right track. And those can change, things happen, life happens, and I more than anybody can understand that. So again, it's being able to stay in contact and figure out what goals are we setting, how motivated are we, and how confident are we that we're gonna get there. So that's what I like to call my work talk. So moving from joblessness to employment means change, right, for the individual job seeker. So when we implement the work talk, so the benefits, the rulers, it is important to change and increase the purposeful conversations with the veterans about the possibilities of employment and the veterans' experiences in the working world. So really trying to utilize those open-ended questions. So rather than saying, are you employed right now? You're going to get a yes or a no. So instead, let's change it to, what were some of the jobs that you really enjoyed? And what were some of the jobs that you disliked? That way, you are not only getting to know your veteran or getting to know the person that you're working with, it creates a conversation. And then you can take points from that conversation to go on to a different conversation, and you can build on that rapport, on that sense of trust, and be able to successfully set some goals. So here are some of the community employment partnerships that I just really like to highlight, that I am either currently working with, would like to work with, things that are available to not only me at the VA, but all of you here at today's presentation. So I already sort of touched on our HVRP program. We have our DevOps and our Leavers. So that's our Department of Labor affiliates. We have the VRAP program, the Bureau of Veteran Services here at the state of Maine, in the state of Maine. Eastern Maine Development Corporation is a wonderful program out of the Bangor area that really helps a lot with job seeking, job counseling, community employment in general. The Maine Military Family Assistance, Maine Hire a Vet campaign, the Homeless Veteran Community Employment Services, so that's myself, the VOC Rehab Department, and Compensated Work Therapy. So those are two programs outside of mine that exist in the VA that also focus on employment. Those two programs have eligibility requirements, and I like to work in conjunction with them, so that I'm able to assist the veterans that are eligible for those programs that I may not otherwise be able to work with. There's the Work Opportunity Tax Credit for folks that are hiring veterans, the post 9/11 GI Bill, if veterans are wanting to go back to school. And like I mentioned before, the homeless veteran stand downs, and then also our local vet centers. So to wrap it up, I thought that this testimonial from this young man is something that is really, really important, and I wanted to share with everybody. And being a military veteran, anytime I ever did any outreach, there was always a point in the presentation where I said I wanted to foot stomp something, where I really, if you take away nothing else from this presentation, I want you to take away this. So please watch this video and you'll see why.
The hardest part about being homeless was not being myself. That was not how God designed me to be. I wasn't designed to live like a vagabond. I found myself in a position where no one cared about me. I didn't even care about myself.
A lot of us are not brought up to understand our value. And God revealed to me my value. My mother couldn't tell me. I didn't grow up with a father. My wife couldn't tell me. It took me going to prison to find out that I had purpose. And that's what keeps me now. Purpose.
What I'd like people to know about homeless people is that we're just like them. We have the same desires. We have the same drive. We're intelligent. Sometimes we just need help.
Okay, so again, something that's really important is homeless folks are just the same as everybody else. They're intelligent, they're smart, they're driven, goal-oriented. Sometimes they just need a little help. So it is our job collectively to get them the help and allow them and contribute to them being successful. So I wanted to end it today with my contact information is here. So my email, Kylie.Higgins@va.gov. Please feel free to email me any questions you may have, resources, referrals, collaboration opportunities. I am open to anything. And then also, if you ever need to contact me, my work cell is there, 207-314-7402. So I'm going to turn my video back on. Does anybody have any questions?
Number one, Carly, thank you very much for the presentation on behalf of the Maine Hire Vet campaign. That was a very, very good presentation. I have put your phone number in the chat box and also your email address. I do have a question from John Willett.
Sure.
I'd like to know if your slide presentation is available and could we send it to him?
Absolutely. I can send it to
send it to Frank.
Yep,
and
I can
Frank
send it
will
to Frank.
email it out. Frank has his email address, so he will mail it out to him.
Great. Yes, I would love that. Absolutely.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to open the floor for questions. So please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask away.
Hi, Kylie. I'm Alan Blackstone. I'm a vet rep out of Portland. I'm a Devo.
Hi, Alan.
Hi. A couple of questions. First one, I had no idea that VRAP was still available at all whatsoever. And so they will pay for training for 12 months up for someone like maybe doing a CDO license, those types of things.
Yep. So it's sort of combined with like the post 9/11 GI Bill. So if someone, or with voc rehab, so if someone is eligible for either of those two programs, it will cover those types of certificates. And someone from either the VBA or like a local college advisor would be able to answer more questions on that, or I would be happy to answer more questions on that or provide resources. There's also a couple different programs that are specific. So there's a program specifically for teachers. So if there's a veteran that is interested in expanding their education and becoming a teacher, whether it is like an elementary school teacher, all the way up to principal, things like that, they provide funding for that specific education because it is a career that is lacking. So they're really advocating for veterans who are interested in education to have those opportunities. So another good program, and I can send links to that as well.
But it sounds like it's VRAP in the past used to be for people who didn't have any post 9/11, didn't have any VR&E, so they didn't have a disability rating, so that they were, and this sounds like you still kind of have to have something of that going on. Either is some post 9/11 GI Bill still available to you, or a disability rating.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not the old VRAP that we knew.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Second question. And this might not be a question you can really answer, but I know of multiple veterans that have been given a temporary 100% VA rating due to PTSD or some type of issue from serving in recent wars, and they are not eligible for work. They can't work. They're told they can't work. They don't have. They're unemployable at the time. Isn't that kind of going against what you're trying to do here? I mean, if you were trying to, even if the person says, well, I don't really want to work, but I like farming, or I like this, whatever. and you try to get them into some type of farming program or something that they can get, they have a niche in, or a little bit of a desire. Wouldn't that be the perfect thing for you to be, for this veteran? I mean, that can bring them back to being an active member of our society. And I mean, I realize they're worried because right now they're living off that 100% disability. But to try to, and not penalize them. So if they do get a small stipend or some type of payment for working on this farm or whatever to prepare themselves to do something for themselves in the future, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive.
Right.
And a lot of times, I think there's a common misconception or misperception when someone is given that 100% service connection. Just because you're rated with a service connection and you're rated as, it's like permanent and total, you can still volunteer. It's really a case-by-case basis. So what I really like to suggest is, even if you're not a homeless veteran and you have questions about those kinds of things, come talk to me. I can have informed conversations with VBA counterparts, with the VRNE folks. I can have conversations with anyone to try and at least get more information as to either, one, you can actually work or you can actually volunteer. Because even if someone wants to come in and volunteer, I have plenty of volunteer opportunities across the state that if someone really wants to make that as part of their recovery process or just kind of reintegrate back into the community, I would be happy to present them with those volunteer opportunities, because people are hurting right now, especially in the pandemic. So, you know, having those informed conversations, talking to people one-on-one, really kind of getting to the bottom of, okay, who told you you couldn't work and why? And then if it is a VBA type of question, I'll have those conversations with the VBA so that I can at least give them the information that will, one, help satisfy, okay, well, I actually can't work if my service connection is at risk, which it really should not be. And then two, okay, if I can't work, can I at least volunteer? You know, so I'd be happy to have those conversations with anyone, and I can loop back with the VBA folks too after this presentation with that question and say, hey, can you provide me more information with this or on this?
Well, just when you presented that little scale thing that you know, that was, to me, that kind of just triggered that thought in my mind where, you know, if you could get somebody on that scale and move them towards, you know, that 10, that 9, 10, that would be so important, and give them that confidence as well. And I mean, it's tough if you're 100% rated and you're getting your benefits and everything, and to say, I could lose this if I do something to affect it. But I really want to be doing something. I don't want to be, you know, I'm 20 something years old, I'm 30 years old, and I don't want to be doing this for the next, you know, 40 years or whatever, you know? Right.
I've worked with a lot of people outside of this position. So my prior role at a separate VA, I was working on an inpatient substance abuse treatment program, and I sat in the work dom. So a lot of times, even though people are 100% service connected, they're still able to go out and work, and that didn't impact their benefits as far as the service connection piece. Now, sometimes when folks are getting SSDI or something like that, that may impact their benefits. But again, that's why folks are SOAR certified, and they're able to have those conversations. So our SSVF counterparts are able to have those conversations. I'm in the process of getting SOAR certified myself, so I can have those conversations as well, to really talk about, okay, yes, you have these benefits. These are the ones that may be impacted. These ones are not. And what can we do about it? And that might just be, you can only work 15 hours a week. You can only work 20 hours a week, but at least you're working. You know, so having those informed conversations is really important, and really getting the information, the correct information, is important as well.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Kylie, may I ask a question, please? This is J.R. Abbott. I am a DBOP and leaver for York County out of Springvale, working at home like you know. The basis that I see of these whole programs is the health care system in itself, whether it be emotional, physical, or whatever the case might be. But I know personally that trying to get a veteran into health care is sometimes like pulling strings. A lot of these folks just do not qualify for that. Is there some way that I don't know, a back door to get these folks a VA health care?
So unfortunately, with VA healthcare, like you said, eligibility is a really big piece. So it's really, you know, working with representatives at like your VFW, the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services, if they are interested in receiving VA healthcare, to get that eligibility piece down and filling out the necessary paperwork in order to qualify. I work specifically with homeless veterans. So the homeless veterans qualify differently than, say, myself.
Right.
I personally don't qualify for VHA healthcare because I don't have a service-connected condition and my annual income is too high. So, you know, there's a lot of different avenues that someone could take to get into VHA healthcare. Now, we do have an eligibility office at Togus, and we are also one of the few VAs that actually have a veterans benefits office right on site. So any questions pertaining to eligibility, you could call or have someone call the eligibility office, or if they're interested in filing a claim, we have VBA affiliates, we have DAV, we have VFW, we have the American Legion that can assist veterans. If they do feel like they have a service-connected condition and they're not rated for it, they can help them start that process, file the necessary paperwork, get the evaluations, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not a one-size-fits-all type of eligibility, unfortunately. So it would really depend on which veteran you're working with. And again, if you're ever working with a veteran and you have a question, please feel free to let me know. I can either shoot you over to eligibility, I can put you in contact with some of my VBA folks, or I can find out the answers for you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big issues that I'm seeing with a lot of my veterans is, especially with today's medical issues and things that are going on and not being able to afford health care, whether they're working or not working.
Right.
This seems to be a big issue. And income plays no role as far as VA health care and being eligible. Yes, some people have to make co-pays and things of that nature.
Right.
But the eligibility part itself leaves many veterans locked out of the system.
Oh, I agree. And some other avenues too is a VA or a veteran may not be eligible for VHA healthcare, but they may be able to seek assistance at the local vet centers. So that's another avenue that could be explored as well.
Yeah, but again, if they're eligible for clinical services at the vet center, then most likely they're eligible for VA healthcare as well.
Right. Yeah, it's difficult, and I wish it was an easier process.
Me too.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
Again, you know, for me, I personally, it was when I was separating from active duty, I was like, oh, you know, I already have a VA job. I don't need to go through the rigmarole of filing for a service connection. So I just never did. You know, and I can do that now, or, you know, later on, you know, things like that. But I'm the kind of person, I'm like, no, I'm fine now. I don't need, you know, I'm fine. It's okay. Right. But then I was like, well, I can still get women's health services at the VA, right? And they're like, no, you can't. Right. And I was like, what? I'm a veteran. I'm a female veteran. What do you mean? You know, so it's tough. It's tough.
Well, I wanted to, in closing, I just want to say thank you very much. There's a lot of information here that I've been familiar with, and a lot that I'm not. And I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for participating. I appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you to Kylie. I really enjoyed your presentation, and all of the information is awesome on the homeless program. And I really appreciate that you support getting people back to work. I just had that experience yesterday with a new client who contacted me, and he has this stigma, and even said to me, whether it's true or not, that his therapist told him he is not able to go back to work because he can't be around society. And I just feel like those stigmas need to be erased and eradicated. My background is in occupational therapy, and I think that there's so much meaningfulness for people therapeutically, as well as, you know, for their financial well-being, to have some sort of employment or volunteer services. And so thank you again. It was a really great presentation.
Well, thank you. You know, we've worked together and I really appreciate working with you, and you've been nothing but wonderful. So I'm glad you got to come today.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to see your face.
Yes. Sorry.
The second week in a row we see Jennifer. She did the presentation last week, so.
Yes.
Anyone else have questions? Okay. With that being said, we again would like to thank Kylie very much for her presentation. A lot of great information. A few people left comments on their way out, really saying thank you and they appreciate your presentation. So at this time, if you're not a vet rep, you can file out and we'll end the meeting. Kylie, if you could stay on for a little bit longer, please.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It was really, really nice. I appreciate everything and everything you all do. So have a wonderful day. Talk to you all soon.